What kind of training program lets a new hire teach with one broken headset and a stack of paper manuals from 5 years ago? Kellan Brooks stared at the report in his office, jaw tight. It was the third complaint in a week about Store 4, one of the 9 fitness centers he'd built from scratch over the past 12 years. This one bothered him more than the others. Not because of the complaint itself, but because he didn't recognize the name of the trainer. It mentioned someone named Olivia. And if he didn't know her, that meant something had slipped. He used to know every hire, every front desk worker, every person who cleaned the locker rooms. But now, with 9 locations and over 300 employees, he'd started relying too much on his district managers, especially Tom, who oversaw stores 3 through 6. Tom always had answers. Polished ones. "We're training up a new batch." Or, "We're tightening the supply chain." But Kellan was tired of hearing answers. He wanted truth. So he made a decision. Quietly, without alerting anyone, he shaved his beard, dyed the silver out of his hair, and switched his usual tailored blazer for loose sweats and a hoodie. He'd show up as a trainee at Store 4 and see for himself. Nobody would recognize him. Olivia wouldn't know him, he'd never met her. And the rest were too new or had worked only under Tom's wing. This was a corporate chain now, and the face behind the logo, his face, wasn't common knowledge. On Monday morning, he walked into Store 4 with a duffel bag and the name, Kevin, on his application. The front desk manager, a guy named Zane, barely looked up. "Trainee?" Zane asked, chewing on a protein bar, eyes on a tablet. "Yeah. Cool. Olivia's in Studio C. She'll get you set up." He walked back through the gym, passing members lifting weights, a couple of staff chatting by the vending machine, and a janitor mopping near the locker rooms. It looked clean. Well maintained even. But then he stepped into Studio C. The lights flickered once overhead. A speaker in the corner buzzed. And in the middle of the room, a woman in her late 20s stood in front of 5 new hires trying to project her voice without a mic. "Okay. So we're gonna go over the client intake process next. Please flip to page 12 in your manual." One of the trainees raised her hand. "Mine's missing pages." Olivia sighed without missing a beat and walked over, handing hers over. "Here, use mine. I've got the process memorized." Kellan watched as she continued, upbeat but clearly worn down. The headset on the table next to her had a frayed wire. She tried to plug it in once, got static, and gave up. The markers on the whiteboard were almost dried out. She had to scribble 3 times before anything showed up. He leaned closer to the guy next to him. "Is it always like this?" the guy Jason whispered. "Yeah. She's good though. Real good. But they don't give her much. Half the stuff she uses, she buys herself." Kellan didn't say anything. Just watched. After the session, Olivia walked over to him. "Kevin, right?" "Yeah. First day. Sorry the setup's rough, we're waiting on replacements for, well, everything." "What happened to the old stuff?" Her smile faded. "Budget cuts, I guess." "I've asked?" "They say it's on the way." He nodded, quietly taking it in. Over the next 2 days, he shadowed her training sessions. She was smart, patient, and never once lost her temper, even when the speakers cut out mid-demo or when a trainee spilled protein shake on the only working laptop. She stayed behind after hours. Cleaned up herself. Rewrote training notes by hand for one of the new hires who had dyslexia. Kellan offered to help once, and she just laughed. "You're the trainee, remember?" But he also noticed something else. Zane, the front desk guy, clocked out early both nights. On Tuesday, Kellan caught him tossing unopened packages in the storage room instead of checking them in. When Olivia asked if the new equipment had arrived, he shrugged. Nothing came in. Kellan made a note. On Wednesday afternoon, a district manager finally popped in. Tom. He walked through the gym like he owned it, wearing a crisp polo and designer sneakers. Olivia greeted him politely, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, nervousness maybe. She asked again about the missing materials. Tom's answer was smooth. We're working on a new rollout. You'll get the updated kits soon. Hang tight. Any idea when? Soon, he repeated, clapped her on the shoulder, and left. Back in the staff room, Olivia dropped into a chair and exhaled. Kellan sat across from her. You don't believe him? She looked up. Doesn't matter. Sure it does. She hesitated. Look, we've had 6 trainers quit in the last 4 months. I've tried to keep things going. But I'm tired. I can't keep covering for what we don't have. Why don't you say something higher up? She gave a short laugh. I've sent emails. I've called. I even tried reaching corporate once. Got a voicemail. Kellan looked around the break room. The fridge was nearly empty. The cabinet had off-brand protein powder and 1 cracked mug. He leaned back, heart heavy. That night, he sat in his car outside the gym for almost an hour, staring at the building he'd once been proud of. He didn't feel proud now. Tomorrow, he'd see how far this went. And what would break if it didn't change. Thursday morning, Kellan arrived early before the first members trickled in and before the music started humming through the speakers. The gym floor was quiet, still lit by the emergency bulbs overhead. He stood near the front desk, unnoticed, watching as Olivia unlocked the side entrance with a ring of keys that shouldn't have been hers. She carried a plastic crate filled with resistance bands, laminated charts, and a power strip. Her hoodie sleeves were pushed up, revealing a faint bruise on her forearm likely from moving equipment the night before. She didn't see him at first. When she did, she gave a nod, not surprised he was early. You're serious about this gig? I'm here to learn, he said, keeping his voice measured. She hesitated, then dropped the crate on the counter. You ever trained before? He shook his head. Not officially. I figured. You don't carry your weight like someone who's spent years on the floor. But you pay attention. She paused. That's rare. He helped her unpack the crate. The resistance bands were worn but usable. The charts were hand-laminated, clearly printed on a home printer. One of them had coffee stains. You bring all this from home? He asked. Most of it. It's either that or wait for corporate to send replacements that never show. Before he could respond, Zane strolled in from the back, earbuds in, hoodie half-zipped. He gave a lazy wave, headed to the front desk, and immediately dropped into the chair behind the counter, spinning it once before tapping on his phone. Kellan turned slightly. Is he always that checked out? Olivia didn't answer right away. He gets his hours in. Not much more. A short while later, the gym lights brightened, and members began filtering in. Kellan followed Olivia through the day's training block. She had 3 new hires shadowing her on the cardio floor, and he watched her juggle questions, adjust machines, and demonstrate form correction, all while keeping an eye on a client who'd arrived early for a one-on-one session. Halfway through the session, one of the new hires' trainee gestured toward the back. Hey, there's a guy yelling in the locker room. Olivia didn't hesitate. Stay here. Kevin, come with me. They reached the men's locker room to find 2 members in a heated argument, one red-faced and shouting, the other standing calmly but clearly fed up. A towel lay on the floor between them. There's no rule that says I can't use that bench, the louder one barked. You shoved my stuff off it, the other replied evenly. Olivia stepped in fast. Gentlemen, this isn't how we handle disputes here. Sir, if you pushed another member's belongings, that's a violation of our conduct policy. The louder man, a stocky guy in his 50s, turned. He gave me attitude first. Kellan watched closely. Olivia's posture didn't change. No aggression. No backing down. We'll review the footage, she said. But this gym has 0 tolerance for aggressive behavior. You'll need to leave for the day. The man scoffed. You don't have the authority. I do when safety's at stake. Your membership can be reviewed by management if necessary. The man glared, then shoved past them. Olivia didn't flinch. Later, Kellan caught up to her as she wiped down equipment. You handled that well. I've had worse. Is that common? More than it should be, she said, her voice quiet. We don't have a full-time manager anymore, not since Rachel left. I've been covering some of it, but I'm not authorized to suspend members or write up staff. So it's a lot of gray area. He stopped in place. You're running the floor and part of operations without the title? She nodded. Tom says it's temporary. Kellan didn't speak. Instead, he walked toward the back office, where Zane had disappeared after his shift technically started. The door was open. Zane sat at the desk, feet up, watching videos on his phone. A delivery sat unopened nearby, clearly labeled Studio Supplies. You planning to check that in? Kellan asked. Zane looked up, startled. You're the new guy, right? Kevin. Yeah, well, I'll get to it. It's been sitting there since morning. Zane paused. You want to impress someone, Kevin? Kellan kept his tone neutral. Just trying to do things right. Zane stood up slowly, stretching. Look, no offense, but you're not management. Neither's Olivia, no matter what she thinks. She takes everything too seriously. This isn't a charity. If corporate cared, they'd send us better stuff. You don't think they care? They care about numbers. Not broken headsets or who's picking up after who. That's why I don't kill myself over this place. Kellan nodded once. Appreciate the honesty. He walked off without another word. That evening, Olivia held a final session in the small studio. One of the new hires, Marcus, struggled to set up the projector. The HDMI cable wasn't long enough, and the adapter was missing. Olivia tried to improvise with printed slides, but Kellan could see the frustration creeping in. When the projector finally flickered to life, blurry and tilted, she didn't complain. Just kept going, voice steady. But when the session ended and the others left, she sat down on the floor, back against the mirror, and closed her eyes for a long moment. He sat down next to her. You ever think about quitting? He asked. She opened her eyes. Every week. But the people I train, some of them are single moms, second chance hires, people who never thought they'd get certified. I leave, they lose more than a trainer. You shouldn't have to carry that alone. I know, she said, then looked at him. What did you do before this? Before applying here? He hesitated. Ran a business. What kind? Fitness. Started with one gym. Grew from there. She tilted her head. Why'd you stop? To see what I'd built from the ground level. Been a while since I was in the middle of it. She didn't respond right away. Then said, sounds like something a CEO would say. He smiled. Maybe. The next morning, Kellan arrived with purpose. He walked past the front desk without stopping. Straight to the office, where Zane sat again late, this time, with his jacket still on. Kellan stepped inside and closed the door behind him. You're done here. Zane blinked. What? I own this company. You're done. Zane scoffed. You're kidding. Kellan's voice didn't rise. You've lied about deliveries, neglected your duties, and disrespected the staff. You've been clocking in and doing nothing. That ends now. Zane's face flushed. You can't, I can. And I just did. Security will escort you out. Kellan left him there, stunned. An hour later, Olivia came into the break room to find the staff buzzing. Zane was gone. The unopened packages were being sorted. And Kellan stood at the center, clipboard in hand, issuing instructions. She stared at him. He met her eyes. I've got a few things to explain. Kellan gathered the staff in the studio just after opening, before the first wave of members hit the gym floor. No one had been told why. Olivia stood near the back, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The others, trainers, a couple of front desk workers, and one janitor, looked between each other, confused and cautious. I owe you all some clarity, Kellan said. My name's Kellan Brooks. I'm the founder and CEO of Elevate Fitness. I've been working here the last few days under a different name to see what this location is really dealing with. Murmurs erupted. One of the newer hires, Marcus, let out a stunned, "Wait, what?" "I didn't do this to trick anyone," Kellan continued, his voice steady. "I did this because I stopped recognizing the company I built. And what I've seen here, what you've all had to work through, it's not just unacceptable. It's on me." The room went quiet. No one moved. "I've already removed the front desk supervisor. That change is permanent. We'll be bringing in a temporary manager from another location until we promote someone from within. But that's not all. I've opened an internal audit into how equipment requests and staffing updates have been handled across the district. And that includes a full review of Tom's oversight." Olivia's arms slowly uncrossed, but she didn't say anything yet. Her face was still unreadable. Kellan turned slightly, making sure to address the whole room. "None of this fixes what you've been through. But it's a start. And it only works if we're honest going forward. I want every trainer, every floor staff member, to have direct access to report issues. Not through layers of middle management who bury problems." He stepped aside then, giving the floor back to them. No one spoke right away. Then a woman named Jenna, who worked early morning shifts cleaning and assisting on the cardio floor, raised her hand halfway. "Are you actually going to listen? Because I've filed 4 maintenance reports in 3 months." Not one was answered. Kellan looked directly at her. "Yes. And I'll be reviewing every one of those reports personally. I'm not saying that to make a point. I'm saying it because I've now seen what gets ignored." She nodded once, then looked down at her shoes. Olivia didn't speak until the others had dispersed. When she did, it was quiet but direct. "You said you stopped recognizing the company? I don't think you're the only one." Kellan met her eyes. "I know. Good. Because it's not just about equipment. People here have stopped believing they matter. You want to fix that. It's going to take more than a speech. I'm not here to disappear again." She gave a faint nod and walked off toward the studio to prep the next training block. The temporary manager arrived the following day. Her name was Daria, pulled from Store 7, and she came with a no-nonsense demeanor and a clipboard that never left her side. Kellan introduced her to everyone personally and made it clear she had his full support, but that she was also there to learn, not just supervise. By midweek, Olivia had been assigned a reduced training load to give her time to help restructure the onboarding program, which she reluctantly agreed to. Not because she didn't want to help, but because stepping back made her uneasy. "I'm not used to anyone else picking up the slack," she told Kellan in passing, sorting through a shipment of new mats that had actually arrived this time. "You shouldn't have to be," he said. "That ends now." Meanwhile, Kellan kept a low profile. He still dressed like a trainee, still helped spot during lifting sessions, and still wiped down machines after member use. He wanted to see how things evolved when people didn't think they were being watched by the top. That's how he noticed Marcus struggling. During a client assessment, Marcus flubbed the explanation of a basic movement screening protocol. The client looked confused, then annoyed. Olivia stepped in gently to redirect, but Kellan caught the look in Marcus's eyes, embarrassed, overwhelmed. Later, in the break room, Kellan sat across from him. "You okay?" Marcus shrugged. "Just tired. I've been studying at night. Trying to keep up, but I'm not where I should be yet. You're not alone in that. I just don't want to screw up. This job's the first good thing I've had in a while." Kellan leaned forward. "You won't. We're going to pair you with a mentor. Someone who's been through it. You'll get there." That same afternoon, he called Olivia into the office. "I want you to help design a peer mentorship system. Not just for trainers across all roles. You'd lead it. With pay. And full authority to assign pairings." She sat down slowly. "That's a big ask. I know. What happens when corporate pushes back? Budgets, headcount, all of it. I'm corporate. They'll answer to me." She studied him for a long moment. "All right. But I want autonomy. I don't want to have to ask permission to do the right thing. You won't have to. She stood. Then I'm in. Kellan didn't make any more speeches. Instead, he started showing up at 5 a.m. alongside the openers, helping stock towels and test machines. He ran 2 onboarding sessions himself quietly, without announcement so he could audit the process firsthand. He moved Olivia's laminated charts into a digital format, then offered her a design team to polish the materials. And on Thursday, he walked into the back office where Tom had just arrived for a scheduled check-in. Tom stood when he saw him, confused at first, then stiffening. Kellan. Wasn't expecting you. You should've. Tom gestured toward the desk. I've got the latest reports. Revenue's up 4%. We're stabilizing. Kellan didn't sit. He kept his voice calm. I'm not here about numbers. I'm here about how you've handled your people. Tom raised an eyebrow. Is this about Olivia? I've spoken to her. She's passionate, but she has a tendency to overextend. She's been running your store. Unpaid. Unrecognized. And when she asked for help, you gave her excuses. Tom opened his mouth, but Kellan cut him off. You buried equipment requests. Ignored staffing concerns. Let a front desk lead create a toxic environment on your watch. Your job was to escalate, not filter. I was protecting the brand. No. You were protecting your metrics. And you're done. Tom's face turned pale. You're firing me? I'm holding you accountable. You don't get to manage people you refuse to advocate for. Tom didn't argue. He just nodded stiffly and walked out. Kellan didn't watch him leave. That night he stayed late, sitting on the bleachers in the empty studio while Olivia and 2 other staff members tested a new onboarding module. They didn't see him there. He didn't interrupt. He just watched as they worked, tweaking pacing, adjusting language, correcting slide transitions. No one was rushed. No one looked like they were bracing for disappointment. It wasn't perfect. But it was better. And it was theirs now. When the lights finally dimmed and the studio emptied, Kellan stood, quietly picked up a forgotten clipboard, and left it on the front counter before heading out into the night. 3 weeks after the reveal, the early morning light spilled across the parking lot of Store 4 as Kellan pulled in just before 6. The changes, though still in motion, had already altered the rhythm of the place. The front entrance was cleaner, the front desk neater, but what struck him most was the shift in posture of the people inside. They moved with more intent, less guardedness. Inside, Daria was reviewing an updated shift calendar on a clipboard, while Jenna wiped down the glass doors with a new microfiber set the supply order finally processed through Central. They exchanged short greetings with Kellan, nothing performative. Just a mutual understanding that things were moving forward and that he was still present. He walked past them and headed straight toward the back training studio. Olivia was already there, rearranging mats for a group session. She didn't look up when he entered. You're early, she said, still adjusting spacing. So are you. She stepped back and surveyed the layout. We've got a small group of first-timers today. I'm testing a new flow based on pacing notes from Marcus. He's doing all right? He's getting better. Still overthinks his cues, but he's learning to read the room faster. Pairing him with Trina helped. She's more intuitive than I thought. Kellan nodded. Good call assigning her. You've got a decent eye for that. Olivia picked up a stray resistance band and coiled it tightly. That mentorship structure we talked about. I've built the first round. 3 peer groups. I kept it small. No point scaling it too fast. I trust your judgment. She finally looked at him. I'm not asking for approval. You shouldn't be. A beat passed. Then she dropped the coiled band into a bin and moved toward the whiteboard. It was freshly cleaned, the markers replaced with new ones that actually worked. You're not here to check on the mentorship program, she said without turning. No, you're not checking on Daria either. No, so what is it? I'm shutting down Store 8. That got her attention. She turned, eyebrows raised. It's the one in Westgate, right? He nodded. It's underperforming. Not just financially. Culture's fractured. The manager's been rotating staff every 2 months to cover retention issues. I went by last week. It's broken. You pulling the plug permanently? No. Temporarily. We'll reassign the viable staff to nearby locations. Use the downtime to rebuild from the ground up. New leadership. New structure. I'm not going to let it rot from the inside out. Olivia leaned against the frame of the whiteboard. You're doing this because of what you saw here. I'm doing this because what I saw here reminded me what happens when I let the wrong people shape my company. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she asked, You still planning to go back to your office full-time? Eventually. But not yet. There's more to fix. She didn't respond, just nodded once and turned back to her layout. Later that afternoon, he sat in the break room with Daria, reviewing the first round of incident logs under her watch. Most were minor missed towel restocks, late shift arrivals. But one entry caught his eye. Read this one, he said, sliding the sheet across the table. Daria's eyes scanned the line. Client complaint. Member named Andrew. Accused of making comments about another member's body during a floor session. Kellan folded his arms. What did we do? She flipped through her notes. Spoke with the member. He admitted to saying something offhand but didn't see it as inappropriate. The woman he directed it at was visibly upset. She didn't want to file a formal complaint, just asked that he not be allowed near her again. That's not how we handle it. Daria looked up. What do you want done? Pull his access immediately. He doesn't get to decide what's harmless. If someone feels unsafe, we act. I'll flag his file. Revoke access and issue a formal notice. Good. And thank the member who reported it. Quietly. Let her know she was heard. Daria nodded and made a note. By the time evening sessions rolled around, Kellan was back on the floor, shadowing a strength circuit Olivia had designed. He wasn't in charge. Just spotting, listening, watching the flow of the room. The music was well balanced now, new speakers installed 3 days prior. The lighting had been adjusted too, less flicker, more consistent. Small things, but they added up. Halfway through the session, a young man in his early 20s, part of the new onboarding class, missed a cue and dropped a kettlebell too close to his own foot. Olivia reached him in 2 steps. Stop. Breathe. Don't rush the transition. He gave a sheepish nod and reset his stance. Kellan watched as she moved through the group like she'd been doing it her whole life. No clipboard. No headset. Just presence. Fully locked in. After the session, as members filed out and mats were wiped down, he caught her by the water station. Can I ask you something? He said. She grabbed a towel from the bin and nodded. You ever think about taking a different role? Not out of the studio. Just broader. You offering me a desk? No. A seat. She narrowed her eyes. On what? Internal Operations Board. We're building a new advisory group. Staff-driven. Trainers, floor leads, maintenance. I want your voice on that. She considered it for a long moment. I'm not a suit. I don't want suits. I want people who've been in the trenches and still bother to care. She looked away briefly, then nodded. Fine. But I'm not sugarcoating anything. Good. We've had enough of that. A week later, the first internal advisory meeting took place off-site, in a conference room Kellan used to rent back when Elevate was just 2 gyms old. Olivia was there. So was Jenna. So was Marcus, who still stumbled through his words when speaking aloud but had earned the respect of every trainer he'd worked beside. They outlined communication frameworks, escalation protocols, and a rotating schedule of shadow audits, anonymous drop-ins by board members to ensure standards stayed consistent. Every policy came from the floor. Nothing was imposed from top down. When the meeting ended, Kellan stayed behind, alone in the empty room. He looked around at the folding chairs, the dry erase boards still covered in notes, the half-empty coffee cups. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't polished. But it was real. He pulled out his phone and opened the employee dashboard. There was a new message waiting: feedback from Store 4's latest audit. Trainer morale improving. Equipment requests now processed within 72 hours. Turnover down. Member satisfaction score up 7%. He closed the app and stood. On his way out, he passed the cleaning crew arriving for the night shift. One of them, a man in his 60s with a slight limp, nodded politely as they crossed paths. Kellan stopped. "What's your name?" The man looked surprised. "Luis. You work Store 4 too?" "Mostly evenings. Sometimes weekends." "You ever have issues getting supplies?" Luis gave a tired shrug. "Sometimes. Mopheads run out fast. But lately it's been better. If anything ever breaks or runs out again, you tell Daria. Or Olivia. Or me." The man raised an eyebrow, then nodded slowly. "All right." Kellan walked out into the parking lot, the sky already darkening. The lights above the entrance glowed steady. There were still 8 locations to check, still people he hadn't met, still cracks in the foundation that needed sealing. But this one Store 4 it was holding. Not because of one person. Not even because of him. But because the people inside it had finally been seen, and once that happened, they stopped surviving and started shaping. Kellan got in his car. He didn't need to drive far tonight. Tomorrow, he'd be back.